Hi, I'm Danny Yao, and you're watching the AU Review.
Congratulations on the record. I understand you had a bit of a party on Friday to celebrate.
Yeah, we had the album launch, which is great. It's always weird launching those things, you know, trying to wrangle your friends and putting yourself on show, and it becomes your night and you're basically extremely nervous. It's so different from playing in other people's bands where you're just like, oh, you see the singer and the guy in the band be nervous and you're just drinking with the drummer. The tables were turned.
But it all went well?
Yeah, it all went great. It sounds terrible, but yeah, the gig was great. And then just that moment of relief after it was done was great. We did these very special booklets, which you can get at shows with the lyric booklets, because no one really gets those anymore and no one's going to buy the CD. But if you buy one at the show, you get a lyric booklet. But what ended up happening was that people were just picking them up and following along to the lyrics live during the show. It was like almost like I was in a play, and people were just constantly not looking at me and looking into the book in their laps. But I was really worried I'd get the lyrics wrong and everyone would know. So,
well, that's one way to test yourself on your own songs. Almost karaoke.
Exactly right.
I kind of like that idea though. I like the idea of kind of people playing along at home, especially, well, they're not familiar with the songs as well. They know a few of them, but they're not familiar with the record yet. And
look, and that's always the challenge, you know, because doing this, sometimes you just wonder, does the world need another 10 songs? You know, and is it completely indulgent? But you feel like, well, if you work really hard on it and you don't write a song called All I Want for the 400th time, then maybe you have something to say, and the more that I can do to help people get across that. Yeah, so providing lyrics, telling the stories of songs, all that sort of stuff, trying to do a decent website, all those sort of things helps immensely.
And tell us a little bit about the record, looking at the cover here. How far back does some of this music go?
A lot of it is really, really recent. This record basically came about in the last couple of years. I was living overseas and I came back to Sydney. And then I guess it was, I moved back to Sydney thinking, well, I'm not going to have my old life. I'm going to move to the beach. I'm going to be a beach person or something. None of that happened. All my friends were in the inner west and I moved back here. And then I was going to be a dad. And I realized that if I didn't record this album soon, I wouldn't be recording it for years. And the songs that I wrote were all about, okay, this might be where I'm going to live forever. And the album's called Do You Think We'll Live Here Forever? And it's a real conversation that me and my partner had about, we kind of have to not be transient, Instagrammy, always on holidays for 6 weeks people. We need to settle down, and the record is about that. You know, it's a really homemade record. At one point I wanted to call the album Home Cooking. It's all about living in flats and watching TV and drinking wine, and that's where I was, and that's what I wanted to write about.
It seems from the very song titles to the music that I know well already, a very personal record and a very Sydney record, in a very traditional Sydney way. You know, in a way Tim Friedman and Dave Graney and people like that have done before. It's all about really referencing what's happening here, what's happening now. You know, how important was it for you to make it a Sydney record and not something that was interpretable for anyone living anywhere?
It was very important for me to make it a Sydney record, because if there's something that I don't love about the last few years of Australian music, although it's definitely changed very recently, is certain bands, I might as well name them, bands like Birds of Tokyo and stuff, would just sound like they could have came from anywhere. And living overseas, there was no pride in being an Australian and hearing these bands. Now it's great. Now you have Royal Headache and Courtney Barnett, and some American kid is thinking of the suburb of Preston in Melbourne the way I thought about Rockaway Beach by the Ramones, you know, like those places. So I thought that was really important. But I don't know if it's that alienating to anyone outside of Sydney. There's so many great songs that mention place names. I've never been to Santa Monica, but I like that Everclear song. You know, like I've never been to Jackson. That you know, Johnny Cash, June Carter song is amazing. You put yourself into it, and I don't know if it was just a shopping list of titles, then yeah, but it's a feeling about a place, and God knows everyone I know is defensive or in love with their neighborhood and that feeling, and I just wanted people to not sing same old songs trying to sound like they're on American radio. I love bands at the moment, Australian bands, who are really pushing the you know, we're from Australia, we sing about Australia, this is our story.
I was going to mention Courtney Barnett. Is there any relationship to the Courtney you're talking about in the song and Courtney Barnett?
No, I wish there was, but that album is fantastic. It's so much what I love about music. But the real Courtney is actually a girl that I know who, it's 10 years younger than me. I met her through a class that I was doing, and she's 19. She loves Paramore, and she was telling me that, I'm moving to Newtown and I'm starting a band, which is exactly what me and my friends did, 10, 15 years ago. And I love that doesn't stop, and I love that maybe that will never stop. And I love that, I was that weird kid in high school who listened to Triple J when none of my friends did, moved as soon as I could out into the suburbs and pursued that dream, ended up here. But, it's just, I love that dream is alive.
There is something to be said for that as well, that idea that in spite of all the changes to the music industry and everything that's happened in the last 15 years, at the end of the day, it comes down to people going into their garages, into their basements, into their attics, into their living rooms, and starting a band.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff about what's happening with the music industry interests me a lot. But I keep coming back to the fact that no matter what happens, it doesn't seem like there's a lack of people falling in love with music, And friends of mine who are like, if you spend less than $400 on a pair of headphones, you're a loser. It doesn't stop anyone from falling in love with music. Listening to an album start to finish doesn't mean you fall in love with music more than the next person. It's a great time, for just so much music around.
So tell us a little bit about the journey that this album will be taking you on in terms of your live shows and what you've got planned for the next few months.
Well, we'll be trying to find as many gigs as we can. We're going up to Brisbane on the 15th of October, and we'll be in Melbourne in November. And we're doing a Christmas show in Sydney, which is all to be announced. But then I think I'm going to try and do more records. I think in this day and age, there's no reason to wait around too much, and I'm going to try and see if I can do one every year. So let's see how I go.
Challenge accepted.